Venezuela President Nicolás Maduro announced the approval of the law on the Integral Defense Command by the National Assembly. In Chile, the campaign for the presidential elections ended, with 5 days to go before the ballots open. UNICEF denounced Israel for blocking the entry of syringes intended for child vaccination and formula milk into the Gaza Strip as part of the genocidal actions. Hello, welcome to From the South. I'm Sophie Fernanda from the teleSUR studios in Havana, Cuba. We begin with the news. Stay with us. In Venezuela, President Nicolás Maduro announced that the National Assembly approved the law on the Integral Defense Command of the nation. During the meeting with the Assembly national leaders, the head of state expressed that this law is a key legal instrument for the country's new military doctrine, which establishes the responsibility of the state and all Venezuelans to defend the territory against internal and external threats. In this regard, President Nicolás Maduro highlighted that the new legal instrument is part of a context of permanent aggression against the Venezuelan people by U.S. imperialism, which refuses to accept the multipolarity of the world and Venezuela's decision to be a free, independent and sovereign country.
The integral defense commands are very clear about their tasks, their structures, and their missions at all stages from this moment on. Upon signing this law, all integral defense commands must be activated in the early hours of today.
Que reúnen a todas las instituciones públicas del Estado venezolano, a la institución militar.
All public institutions of the Venezuelan state, the military institution, and all the people's power. So, I affirm that the order must be activated so that the integral defense commands are established, structured, and get to work to be prepared if we as a republic
ir a la lucha armada para defender esta sagrada herencia de los libertadores y libertadoras.
And as a people have to engage in armed struggle to defend this sacred heritage of the liberators. We are ready to win, to triumph through patriotism and courage. I therefore proceed to sign and enforce the law of the creation of the integral force commands at the national level.
Firmada.
For its part, Russia warns of U.S. actions against Venezuela and indicates that the increasing tensions in the region. Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov said that Washington's actions are unacceptable, lack due process and damage the United States' reputation in the international community. Lavrov also stressed that Washington must stop attacking Nigeria and Venezuela under the guise of a war on drugs to seize the oil fields and instead combat the drug problem in Belgium to eradicate drug trafficking in the heart of Europe. President Trump has maintained a military deployment in the Caribbean Sea since August, drawing strong criticism from countries such as Colombia, Mexico and Brazil.
I cannot finish my comment on Venezuela without stating our position on the unacceptability of the actions taken by the United States. Under the pretext of fighting drug trafficking, they are destroying boats, which they claim are carrying drugs, without any trial or investigation, and not just without a trial, but without presenting any facts to anyone. This is how, in general, lawless countries act, as well as those who consider themselves above the law.
For his part, Colombian President Gustavo Petro ordered the immediate suspension of intelligence cooperation with the United States agencies on Tuesday. The decision comes after military operations carried out by the United States off the coast of Venezuela, in the Caribbean Sea and the Eastern Pacific, which have left around 76 people killed and some 20 boats destroyed. The president justified the decision by pointing out that the fight against trafficking must be subordinated to the human rights of the Caribbean people, and reiterated that the U.S. attacks constitute violations of sovereignty and international law. Colombia thus joins the United Kingdom, which will also suspend intelligence sharing with the U.S. on operations in the Caribbean. And now we have a short break coming up. But first, remember you can join us on TikTok at teleSUR English, where you will find news in different formats, news updates, and more. We'll be right back. Stay with us. Welcome back to From the South. And the candidates in Chile's presidential election campaigns ended on Tuesday, with 5 days before the ballots opened. The presidential candidate for the governing Unity for Chile coalition, Janet Jara, closed her campaign today with a rally in front of about 20,000 people in the historic Plaza de Maipú. The flag bearer for 8 left-wing social democratic and progressive parties, plus the Christian Democrats, expressed her excitement about the rally in the square, where Chile's independence was sealed. For his part, the far-right candidate José Antonio Cast was accompanied by about 10,000 people in downtown Santiago at the Movistar Arena, where the representative of the conservative right reiterated his intention to establish an emergency government to address insecurity. In other news, the Mexico-Canada Action Plan is moving forward, and both countries are ready for the review of the USMCA in 2026. The Mexican Secretariat of Foreign Affairs reported on the dialogue between the foreign ministers of Mexico, Juan Ramón de la Fuente, and Canada, Anita Anand, following up on the meeting a few months ago between the President Claudia Sheinbaum and Prime Minister Mark Carney. During this Tuesday's meeting, in the context of the G7 ministerial meeting, the officials redefined the agendas and reviewed the content of the bilateral meetings to be held in Mexico in the coming weeks. Among the topics discussed were agriculture and port connectivity, as well as the memorandum of understanding signed between the labor ministries of both countries. In other news, protest continues in the Dominican Republic due to the massive power outage that left the entire country without electricity and paralyzed essential services. Public outrage was expressed by burning tires and blocking streets in various areas. The power failure severely affected hospitals, banks, and small businesses and thousands of homes, also causing traffic to grind to a halt on all roads and interrupting the water supply. According to the Minister of Energy and Mines, Joel Santos, the incident was caused by a failure that ended up affecting the entire system, creating what is known as a blackout, and confirmed that the national government is working to gradually restore electricity service. The National Human Rights Council of Brazil demanded that the state declare a state of public calamity to address the widespread violence and structural collapse of public policies aimed at these peoples. The announcement comes in parallel with the COP30 conference on climate change. Our colleague Ignacio Lemus gives us more details.
Mientras los ojos están en las negociaciones.
While all eyes are on the climate change conference negotiations, on the other side of Brazil, in Mato Grosso do Sul, a state on the border with Paraguay, the Guarani Kaiowá seem to strengthen their struggle. After reclaiming part of their territory in the Wiraruca indigenous land, the indigenous people were violently replaced by landowners and police.
There
were 4 attacks, most of them involving riot police. They said they had orders, but most of them were illegal.
Los territorios ancestrales.
The ancestral territories that once were forests are now invaded by large extensions of soybean and corn monocultures. Together with sugarcane, these raw materials are used as livestock feed or for the production of biofuels. Indigenous people complain that the agrochemicals used in large-scale farming reach their villages, destroy their gardens, and poison their water.
A nossa cabeça tá firme, a nossa luta a gente leva.
Our minds are steadfast. We fight with tears in our eyes, shedding our tears in our land, and we always remain steadfast. We are asking for help. At least give us the piece of land so we can breathe the poisonous air better.
La transición energética
The
para
energy
evitar
transition to prevent global warming requires the replacement of fossil fuels, the main sources of gas emissions into the atmosphere. At COP30, agribusinesses is lobbying in favor of the production of so-called green fuels. For the Guarani Kiowa, there is little that is green about a model that expels communities and feeds off the blood of indigenous communities.
A gente não está pegando o Brasil inteiro, a gente está
We are
pegando
not taking all of Brazil, just a piece to leave a space for our grandchildren.
pro nosso neto. Para nós deixar,
To leave
pra
it,
nós plantar,
to
pra
plant,
nós produzir,
to produce,
para nós trazer a volta, planta. Pra nós
to bring back
trazermos
the
de
plants,
volta
to bring back
as
the fruits,
frutas,
to plant for our
pra
children.
plantar para nossas filhas.
el Consejo Nacional de Derechos Humanos de Brasil
The
declaró
National Human Rights Council of Brazil declared a state of systematic violations of the human rights of indigenous peoples and called for actions by the state. Recovering their land and planting crops is the desire of the Guarani Kiowa. Still healing from the wounds of the latest violent attacks, they continue to replace soybeans with traditional, diverse and poison-free crops.
Ignacio Lemus y Pedro Viaba para Telesur.
We have a second short break coming up. But first, we invite you to visit our Facebook page at teleSUR English. There you'll be able to watch our top stories, special live coverage and much more. Follow our page and activate the notification button to stay up to date on the world's most recent events. Final short break, but we'll be right back with more from the south. Don't go away. Welcome back. UNICEF denounced Israel for blocking the entry of syringes intended for child vaccinations and formula milk to the Gaza Strip as part of its genocidal actions. Since last Sunday, UNICEF has begun a vaccination campaign targeting 40,000 children under the age of 3 who have not been able to be vaccinated due to Israel's attack on Gaza. The emergency intervention is vital to rebuild the damage caused to the coastal entity's health system. According to the health authorities of the territory, since the ceasefire came into effect last month, Israeli forces have killed at least 236 Palestinians and injured another 600 in the territory. These figures are in addition to the 68,875 dead and 170,679 injured due to Israeli offensive since October 2023. Also in Palestine, Israeli occupation forces carried out attacks in residential areas in the Gaza Strip. Zionist aggression has led to the displacements of thousands of Palestinians so far. Meanwhile, the search for bodies has been hindered by the blockade imposed by Tel Aviv against Palestinian civil protection teams, who are also being prevented from rescuing the wounded. It should be noted that the Gaza government authorities are making continuous efforts to bring a definitive end to the hostilities, the total withdrawal of Israeli troops and the release of Palestinians held in Israeli prisons. Meanwhile, Palestinian resistance movements described as a war crime the Israeli parliament's approval of the first reading of a law authorizing the execution of Palestinian prisoners. The Israeli execution law was unanimously rejected by Palestinian movements, who warned that the new law legalizes systematic murder and turns military courts into mere instruments for legalized death. The Palestinian resistance denounced that the law not only reflects the racist nature of the occupation, but also formally legitimizes the killing of detainees under the occupation state's legal framework. Although it still has to pass a parliamentary committee and 2 additional readings for final approval, the initiative has been condemned by global human rights organizations for violating international humanitarian law. In other news, we move to Sudan, where the United Nations has denounced the systematic human rights violations, killings and disappearance of children, following the takeover of the city of El Fasher by rapid support forces. The regional dictatorate of the Organization for East and Southern Africa condemned the deliberate use of sexual violence by armed groups against hundreds of displaced women. It warned about the lack of safe places and the express posed by the search for food. For 11 million women and girls to kidnapping, assaults and gender-based violence. In this regard, ministers and senior officials from 23 countries in Europe, America and Australia denounced what they consider to be war crimes and crimes against humanity. In other news, at least 12 people were killed and 27 wounded Tuesday in a suicide bombing outside a court in Islamabad, the capital of Pakistan. This attack, the first of its kind in the city in years, was claimed by the Pakistani Taliban group. The explosion caused panic among the population in an area where several government offices are also located. Pakistan has experienced an increase in attacks by armed groups since 2021, but Islamabad has largely remained untouched by militant violence in recent years, while the last suicide bombing occurred in December 2022. In the Philippines, at least 27 citizens lost their lives after Super Typhoon Fungwon passed through, displacing more than 1.4 million people. Media outlets reported that 19 of the dead were in the Cordillera Administrative Region, home to the country's largest mountain range. Among the dead was a 10-year-old boy. In addition, Typhoon Fungwon, locally known as Wang, hit the locality of Luzon after becoming the second cyclone to affect the archipelago in a matter of days, after Kamuri. It should be noted that the disaster has left more than 150 localities in the Philippines without electricity and has destroyed 37 bridges and flooded 12 national highways. At the same time, the United States is experiencing a cold snap from the northern Great Plains, affecting over 18 million people in the states of Alabama, Florida, and Georgia. According to meteorologists, the cold snap caused an abrupt transition to winter temperatures, including a low of -2 degrees Celsius in Jacksonville, Florida. The National Weather Service forecasts that cities such as New York and localities in Rochester, Buffalo, and Jamestown will receive between 5 and 15 centimeters of snow. Experts also forecast the arrival of a new storm system that could bring additional snowfall for the next Wednesday. China welcomes the ancient Roman civilization with the exhibition Rome from Olympus to the Capitol. The Shanghai World Expo Museum welcomes a gallery of marble gods. With over 130 pieces, the venue revives the historical memory of the cradle of Western civilization. The space is presided over by Jupiter, a sculpture of over 2 meters tall, to which are added murals and other crafts from the 1st and 2nd centuries after the Common Era. The exhibition also incorporates interactive resources to narrative episodes from mythology, such as the 12 Labors of Hercules. This cultural dialogue between China and Italy will be open to the public until next year. Moving on to Cuba, the 41st edition of the International Jazz Plaza 2026 Festival now has an official date. The event, which will be held in several Cuban cities, will take place from January 25 to February 1, 2026. 220 international artists and young talents are expected to participate. The festival will offer concerts, visual art exhibitions, dance activities, films, community presentations, and children's areas. Jazz Plaza is presented as an event that celebrates cultural diversity and reaffirms jazz as a language that unites communities. The 2026 edition will focus on the dialogue between jazz and visual arts, featuring the work of Maestro Alfredo Sosa Bravo, winner of the National Prize for Plastic Arts in 1997. And like this, we have come to the end of this news brief. You can find this and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. And also join us on social media. We're on Facebook, X, Instagram, Telegram, and TikTok. For Telesur English, I'm Sophie Fernandez. Thank you for watching.